Hi, I'm Tammy McCutchen, and welcome to another edition of Tammy Talks, where I try to make the complexity of federal and state wage and hour laws simple and maybe even a bit entertaining in under 10 minutes. Today, I want to talk about independent contracting, an increasingly important wage hour issue, but also impacting compliance with tax, benefits, workers' compensation, unemployment, and many other employment laws. COVID-19 has changed the way Americans think about work and how we want to work. Maybe we don't have to go into an office every day. Maybe I can work when, where, and how much I want to, rather than having to work when my employer says I must. Last year saw a 34% growth in the independent workforce. Over 51 million people in this country now work as independent contractors. 63% of those report that working independently was their own choice, not an economic necessity. 68% say that working independently is more secure than having a traditional job. It's a new world out there, but the law is not keeping up. In fact, many legislatures and agency regulators, federal and state, are trying to move us backwards, answering the call of unions, plaintiffs' attorneys, and other employee advocates. Elected officials are trying to put up more barriers to independent work, changing the rules to make classifying workers as independent contractors more difficult and increasing the penalties for misclassification. As independent work becomes increasingly popular, but governments work to tighten the legal requirements, compliance becomes more complicated and confusing. Now more than ever, it is important for companies to classify workers correctly as employees or as independent contractors. Now that is never easy, with more than 100 different federal and state tests under different federal and state laws. Today, to help you navigate this confused morass of fast-changing laws, I want to share a forest-level view of some of the worst and best practices. Let's start with the worst. My top 5 red flags that your workers are misclassified. Number 1, please do not engage a contractor to perform the same work as your employees. Contracting cannot fix a hiring freeze. Once you have employees performing a type of work, don't have contractors do that same work. Red flag number 2, don't engage contractors for full-time work over a long period of time. Just don't. I once ran across an independent contractor who had worked full-time for the same company for 11 years. You're not winning that case. You might want to audit the amount of time each of your contractors have worked for your company. How long is too long? There's no clear answer for that, but many companies try to keep IC engagements to a year or less. Number 3, your IC agreement should not prohibit contractors from working for other companies. In fact, the more companies your contractors work for, the less risk you have. If there's a non-compete clause in your IC agreement, take it out. Number 4, be very careful not to treat your contractors like your employees. Don't give them company uniforms or identification badges. Don't give contractors access to company email and other systems. Don't provide contractors with training or the equipment they need to perform the work. Don't invite contractors to regular employee meetings. Anything you do now for your employees, just don't do for your contractors. Last one, red flag number 5. Do not attempt to control when, where, or how the contractor performs work. In general, courts will find a worker is an independent contractor if the company does not try to control the work, in practice or in the contract. The more control you exercise over the contractor, the more risk you have. Let's turn to some best practices. Number 1 for me, if possible, engage your contractors through a third party and have the third party indemnify you for any violations. A temp agency, a PEO. Also good is engaging large companies with many of their own employees. Yes, the attack on independent contracting is an attack on small businesses and individuals who want to work independently. Best practice number 2 is paying your contractors by the project, not by the hour. If you pay by the hour, the current DOL will find that the contractor is misclassified. Period. End of story. Number 3, yes, you can enforce your contract, that deadlines are met and that work meets specifications and that the contractor meets quality standards, but do not do anything that looks like an employee performance review. But just a way to really reduce your risk. Never be a contractor's first or only customer. If the contractor has many customers, then she is not economically dependent on you. Finally, best practice number 5 is to audit, audit, audit. Every year, randomly select contractors for review, or pull your I-9s and audit the top 10% in terms of receipts. And use the most difficult test that applies to your contractor, state or federal, wage, hour, or tax. Seems daunting? The quickest, most reliable, and most cost-effective way to audit is to use Compliance HR's Navigator IC app, designed by me, kept current by the Littler Law Firm. Next month, I will talk about how you can audit your independent contractor classifications. I will give you 5 pro tips for IC audits in both a Tammy Talk and in a 1-hour compliance webinar on November 9th. Visit compliancehr.com or littler.com to register.